Hey, Zach, Dion here. Super excited to be working with you. Thanks for sending in your video. Of course, your patience as well. I'm getting this back to you. Not normal for us. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again. Lots of good stuff to work on. So overall in your driving, what I really like is for the most part, car position looks really, really solid, which is kind of always step one. From there, the two major things I'd like to focus with you on today is sort of our approach to brake zones. And then, I mean, they're kind of actually interrelated a little bit, but also, the how, why, and when to get to throttle as well. There's some corners where we're getting to throttle too early or driving a little bit too long on maintenance throttle, and we're going to kind of tweak that a little bit. So coming to turn one, what I'm seeing is we are in turn one and then a little bit in turn 9, into turn 4 and a few other areas. We are sort of lifting and coasting into brake zones. So we kind of start our coast back here. We don't really brake until, roughly about that 5, 4, roughly about the 5 board. So we spend a long time coasting into the corner. I want to get rid of that because what ends up happening is when you coast or when you come off the throttle, there's a little bit of weight that shifts a little bit to the front end. And then as you get to the brakes, it sounds a bit counterintuitive. A little bit of that weight gets kind of lost in the middle of the car. And we want as much weight as possible slamming to the front to get as much grip as possible in the brake zone. So you're actually limiting how much grip you've got available in the brake zones by doing that. Now, oftentimes we start to coast into brake zones because we're nervous on how deep we're going. We're like, oh shit, this feels deep, so let me come off and coast into it. What I'd rather see you do is actually brake earlier, but be full throttle off and then commit to the brakes much quicker. So I'd rather see you flat, and then braking at the 6 board a full marker earlier, because A, that puts the weight transfer in a better spot. It's better fundamentally, but then B, it's a lot more consistent. So we can make small adaptations. Much harder to know how early did I lift and how much did I lift and how quickly did I lift and then coasting in here versus I know I stayed flat to the 6 board and I broke at the 6 board. You turn to turn 1 and we're like, oh, that was easy. Okay, now let me go to the 5.5 board or the 5.8 board. A lot more data for you to be able to collect and make small adjustments by doing this, right? So kind of step 1 is in every brake zone, I want you full throttle off and then braking, even if that means you have to brake earlier so that you can have the confidence to be able to do that. All right. So the rest of turn 1, pretty solid, good turning point here. Pretty good job coming down, getting back to throttle. We could probably be a little bit more aggressive to throttle and let the car use a little bit more road out to your left-hand side here. Notice how you're actually closer to the inside of the road than you are to the outside of the road. And that kind of consistently stays true throughout the kind of all middle part of this continued turn 1. I want to see you. I'm not getting my tires all the way out to the grass, but as we exit here, and I'm going to back this up a little bit, right about now, I'm a good third of a car width wider than you, right? So I want to be more aggressive to throttle, get a little bit wider, then commit back to it. Same thing in turn 3. We really start our lift and coast right kind of now, and we're coasting into this brake zone. What that does is it causes you to overslow the entry of the corner, and then we start to pick up the throttle too early in turn 3 because of that. So in here into turn 3, I'd like to see full till about this, at least to the start of this concrete curve, and then start your brake application earlier, right? I'm going to be flat till now, and now I'm starting my brake application here versus here. So you're actually braking deeper than I'd like to see you brake, but then you're coasting into that brake zone. Okay, so now we kind of go into the main theme. One of the most important fundamentals of driving a race car, and it kind of goes back to weight transfer again, a lot of themes here, is where do I get and pick up the throttle? And then what should my throttle trace look like as well? So in turn 3, I'm going to turn the volume up here in my headset. You're not going to hear this, just for me. I'm going to pause it where I hear that throttle start to come in. So we're starting to feed the throttle in right here. Once again, talk about weight transfer. What ends up happening is you pick up the throttle, you take weight off the front end. Where the weight goes is where the grip goes. So you're taking away front grip. Well, what are you asking the front of the car to do right now? you're asking the front of the car to turn. I know it gets super choppy. I apologize. It's something with the Garmin Catalyst, not liking slow motion video, but you're asking for the car to turn down to the apex. So your hands, your body, your mind's like, come on, car, turn. But at the same time, by getting the throttle, your feet are fighting the rest of you and inducing understeer into the car. And that understeer means makes it so where you can't get back to full throttle until it's too late. We're getting to throttle too early because we're overslowing the entry of the corner, and your brain's like, oh shit, I feel too slow, let me get the throttle. One of the most important fundamentals is to not use your throttle to fix the overslowing problem. Your throttle should be timed so as you're ready to unwind the steering wheel, that's where I'm getting the throttle. Typically, right about the apex point. That's where I want to get you the throttle, right? So the no lifting into brake zones is the first thing I want you to work on. The second thing here is getting the throttle when I'm ready to unwind the steering wheel. I'm going to brake at the same point. I'm going to brake with not the same point. We're going to brake a little bit earlier, but carry full throttle there. But I'm going to brake with the same pressure. I'm going to turn in. You're probably going to feel like you're going too slow. You likely are going too slow, but we're going to take away that band-aid of early throttle because that's a bad habit. And as we fix this, we'll be able to fix our overslowing problem in the right way, which is by focusing how we on our brake application. We're not going to talk about that today. I want you just to focus on where am I getting the throttle. This is going to be kind of that 2 steps back to let you go 5 steps forward, right? Because you're going to come in, you're probably going to have the same amount of entry speed, and then you're going to turn in, you're going to feel like, shit, I'm too slow. You're going to want to get the throttle, but we're not. So we're going to go slower, 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 slower. So you might end up going even 4 miles an hour slower here. But it's forcing you to take away the bad habit solution to force you to find the right way to roll in more entry speed. And when we do that, your brain's going to naturally start to look for other solutions. It's going to naturally start to work on coming off the brakes earlier and earlier and earlier to roll in more entry speed. And that's how we want to do it. Because now you're going to come in with more, you're going to be able to roll in 5, 10 miles an hour more entry speed because the weight transfer of the car is correct. And then when you get to throttle, you'll be able to be aggressive to throttle. So right now, a lot of your throttle traces kind of look something like this, like the distance between where you pick up the throttle to get back to full throttle is pretty wide, wide. What I want to see a throttle trace look like is something much more like this, like an exponential curve. So I'm going to be later to throttle, but I'm going to be much more aggressive back to full throttle than you, right? All righty. Next thing out of turn 3 is I want you to treat this exit like you treat the exit of Oak Tree. Out of Oak Tree, you do a great job getting way out of here, using every inch of the road. Turn 3 is the same way. You can float a lot of speed through turn 3. And even more important here is just catching the car using every inch of the road while you commit back to full throttle. So I want to see you straddling this curb. I was wondering, maybe you didn't want to use curbs because I know not every car likes them, but I saw you out of Oak Tree. If you're comfortable out of Oak Tree, this is the same situation, right? All right. So now the third kind of note here applies to this like 4-5 section, and then a little bit through the S's. Through here, you kind of come in, do a good job sacrificing through 4. And now what ends up happening is we're just kind of like maintenance throttle, maintenance throttle, maintenance throttle, maintenance throttle, maintenance throttle, maintenance throttle, and then finally get back to full throttle here. If you're spending a prolonged period of time at maintenance throttle, something that should be a red flag. What I'd much rather see you do here out of 4. Flat, flat, flat. And then as I turn in for 5A, lifting off the throttle a little bit, right? Almost a full lift, and then boom, back to throttle, flat, flat, full throttle, full throttle, full throttle. As I turn in for 5B here, I'm coming off the throttle, I'm coasting, 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 bam, back to full throttle here, right? Spending less time on throttle, but much more time at full throttle. That's what I want to see, because what ends up happening, again, it comes down to weight transfer. I'm back to flat when my hands are straight. That means I can go faster, and then how do I still make the corner at that speed? I come off the throttle, get the weight on the front end, the car is going to turn for me, right? Because if you try to be that whole section flat, you're never making 5A, you're understeering off the edge of the road. But getting back to flat, lifting, you should be really trying to spend as much time at full throttle as possible. You got to have that mentality as a race car driver. If I'm just kind of like cruising at 50, anywhere 30 to 70% throttle through here and turning in at throttle, something's wrong. I need to be flat, lift, get the weight on the front end, boom, back to flat, 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 flat. Okay, I want the front end to turn more. I need to lift so I get the weight on the front end to carve in for me, right? Similar thing here in the S's, although in the S's, it's a little bit harder. Things are happening faster, and it's not going to be as a jerky of a movement. Like there in the low speeds, I can be a little bit more aggressive. Maybe into 5B, I'm being a little bit smoother with my release. In the S's, I'm trying to smooth out my releasing and getting back to full throttle so that I'm not shifting this weight as quickly. Ultimately, into the S's here, good turn-in point. This is all good. Back to the right, I would suggest trying to use this curb here. It opens up the radius of the corner. Your line's great. If you could just use this curb, I think that would really help you. Really, my kind of issue is from about here, we're just kind of cruising, maintenance throttle, and then we brake, right? But then we brake too early, and then what ends up happening? We're on throttle too early. What happens? We understeer, and now we're not back to full throttle until we get out to the exit curve here in turn 10, right? So once again, I'd like to see you try to work back to a little bit more aggressive throttle, a little bit more of a lift here. And here, work it back to aggressive throttle, full, and then a bigger brake application here. If you're going straight, I want you at full throttle until that brake zone. Even if that means you have to brake harder in here, you've got the opportunity to do that. Alrighty. Then that'll help you roll more speed through turn 10. It'll help you delay your throttle to come at the apex point, which will allow you to get back to full throttle more aggressively out of here. Oak Tree, really, really good. Love everything through here. We're too late to aggressive throttle. So I should see aggressive throttle, like working it back to full throttle right now. I don't see that really come until I'm at the exit curve. So if anything, there's two potential reasons for that. One is I think we are turning slightly early back to the right, and we're apexing slightly early here. I think if we can apex that extra half car length later, you'll be able to unwind the steering wheel a little bit earlier. Two is maybe you just actually have a little bit too much apex speed. I would rather see you at, let's say, 43 miles an hour here, but get back to full throttle 2 car lengths early, 3 car lengths earlier for this run down the back straightaway. So just try to play with a later turning point, later apex point. Do whatever you can to get back to full throttle by the time your left front tire gets out to this exit curve. All righty. For right now, turn 14, turn 15, really solid job. I don't want you to change anything there. I love everything you're doing there. Into Hog Pen, a little bit of talk about kind of how we're manipulating the throttle, right? So coming in here, this all looks good. So into Hog Pen, we are again overslowing, and then we're driving through the corner on throttle, right? We're coming in, we're overslowing, and now look how we hold constant 70, 70, 70, 70, 70, and then finally a little bit of a lift here, but 76 roughly. There's not really any weight transferring happening. So what would I rather see here is when I'm coming into Hog Pen, turning point's great. I'm usually flat to about this point or so. I'm okay with a coast, light on the brakes, and then I'm coming off the brakes as I come over the top of this hill, but I want enough speed so as I coast and land, I need another brake application here to make the corner. So there's a lot more speed we can roll through that first left-hander, right? So I'm flat pretty much to, let me back this up a little bit, coming down the hill, full, coming off. Light on the brakes, off the brakes, coast, little bit of a brake application here, coming off the brakes, coast, bam, right back here in this compression area, back to full throttle again. So a lot more speed through that first left-hander, no throttle really until you get down to that compression. You should be able to bring enough speed as you come over the top of that left-hander to where you need a second brake application to help the car turn back to the right to be able to get aggressively back to throttle in that compression area. So lots of focus on the how, when, and why we get to throttle and how we keep that throttle into brake zones. Those are the major notes. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know, but super excited to hopefully see your progress here and find some lap time.